I was born, and I say thankfully, 12 miles on the English side of the Scottish border, and had a Kiwi professor at university, and that was a great experience. And there was a job in New Zealand. The university was altering its courses, and the rest is history. I worked in hill country research, thoroughly enjoyed it, and then, as I say, taught agriculture at the Polytech, where it was a great experience. It was a very busy time, and the Ministry of Ag and Fish, which it was then, was trying to get its messages across because it had gone commercial. In 1992, the government decided that the farmers would have to charge. And there was a few crises coming up. There was a bee crisis where the bees got diseases in Nelson, and then the climax was the snow emergency in Canterbury. And I landed up having to sort of communicate on that and keep the peace. So ended up, that was the Guild of Agricultural Journalists, and that's been a long time involvement with agricultural journalism. And I think having been involved in research when farmers wanted more production, you know, they would come to a field day and say, come on, let's get going. And if you said, well, look, we haven't got enough resources like sheep, the farmers would give you some sheep to get more research done. And it was an enormous thrill to be part of it. And, you know, you get 1,000 farmers turning up at a field day. Great days. Well, I've been involved in wood turning for a while. I wasn't a founding member of the club, but I was a close sort of second tier. Wood turning started as you do with a small lathe that's a load of rubbish, and then you gradually grade up, and that's what happened. And then the club started, and it was great. Get help, enthusiasm, and of course New Zealand, you were never short of wood. So I was secretary for many years with the late Jim Pope, and we started a newsletter. We called it Chips and Shavings. Now the chips was to keep the wood carvers happy, because they were the early innovators in getting people together to do carving. So it was very easy for the wood turners to sort of carry on. And we were in 2 or 3 venues and ended up with the old Scout Hall, which has been a marvellous innovation and home for us all, and there was enough young people in those days. The tradesmen in the club were young, so they could climb up and crawl under. And they did a masterful job in getting the whole place going. And I was always pleased it was left as a community hall, because, you know, we must provide space for about 10 or 12 different groups. And that's very important. I picked it up by reading books and videos. Well, no, there wasn't any videos, but just started mucking about. But then there was Fred and Derek Curwood. Derek Curwood being a teacher and Fred being a teacher, they were gifted teachers. So even the demonstrations they gave, you learned more basics. So it was not difficult to learn how to turn wood, basically. But you see, now wood turning has gone into a form of art, and it's unbelievable what they do. Well, I never reached that level, and very few of us do, but as long as we can do the basics, it's given great satisfaction. But I think, apart from starting the classes, which gave me great satisfaction, the other thing that happened by chance was that a dear friend's daughter needed chemotherapy. So she lost her hair, poor girl, and I remembered old aunts and mothers had hat stands. They used to put the hats on because they always wore a hat. And I made a hat stand for her, and then She wanted another one. She showed the hat stand to the wig selling lady. And this took off. So I made a few, and then I said to the local club, took them along, hey lads and girls, we need some wig stands for the wig selling lady. And that absolutely took off. And then I remember writing an article in the magazine Creative Wood about what we were doing in the club, because we ended up with 40 a month. It was unbelievable, because we've been doing it for 20 years. We must have turned 2,000 wig stands, and it still goes on. And it went nationwide. Been on the committee for many years, was secretary for, when I look back, it must have been 10 years, how the time flies, and always been interested in promotional work, and it's been very rewarding, and we've been very successful in the past. As I say, the concern is now, can we keep up this momentum in a modern world with an aging population, and the people who are working have never been as busy working. Hamilton's got the whole range of woods. You don't need go anywhere to find different woods. And we've got members who have milled wood over their lives, and they've got a full range of, you're never short of a bit of wood of any species. There'll be somebody somewhere has had it. And of course we live in a peat bog. The Waikato is a peat bog, and we're very lucky at what has been dug out of peat bogs, and our particular club's been very lucky to have access to that wood. They've all been good and challenging, even radiata pine, if you're desperate. But some of that is can be made into beautiful grains. Some of the things Derek Kerwood made for the Kawerau pine radiata competition were unbelievable. And it's the skill of the operator, but there's certainly plenty of it around. Well, I think it is, and it's also useful because there's never been any problems with the whole touchwood, and everybody has appreciated. And it was because there was a dear friend, Loma Reed. Her husband had died, and she had a shed full of gear, lathes, bandsaws, and I thought, she's going to injure herself. I'll give her a bit of help. So I asked her down to the club, showed her a bit thing, and then Loma brought some friends. And then the whole thing developed from that. The classes took off. And we used to get more members by, having open days, and we used to attend the winter show. And you'd get a crowd watching, you'd say, anybody like to do wood turning? And you'd always get one or two volunteers. So I had a waiting list. I had to keep a book of people waiting to have a go if there was a cancellation. And the enthusiasm was unbelievable. We taught the basics, and we had classes mornings, afternoons, and that's carried on, and that's been a great feature of the club. They say that there has never been a time when we are less able to predict the future. In the past, you could see how things were going to develop, but not anymore. And it's both worrying and exciting, and I'm not sure which is which. And I think all clubs have got a problem of getting young members. Hobbies. Today's young people have no time for what we used to call hobbies, because they're always on call. They're never away from work, and this is because of modern devices. The whole world has changed, and I don't think it'll ever go back. So it's important, and I've tried to make sure when the grandchildren came, we went into the garage, into the workshop, and we messed about with wood. And I think that's never going to come back. It's a struggle to teach the next generation. I think any members we'll get will be retired tradesmen. which are the older generation. And you see, a lot of them might be retiring, running out of work sooner if the current sort of situation doesn't change. But again, you see, people in tradies, as we call them, have never been as busy. Once things come right, they will never be as busy. But in the meantime, it was good to find that many wives joined their husbands in the wood turning club to get them out of the house, knowing that they were mucking around with wood. And the husbands were forever thankful. So it's a great hobby. Yes, yes. And that's why I've been very keen to push and push that everybody wears a face mask in the classes. I've had a few things fly off, despite it looking good. And of course, many members have a chainsaw, and one of the most lethal weapons. And I think we've done a bit of training to try and get people to realize what a lethal weapon that is. But everything has a potential to do damage. Bandsaws, a lot of people have their own bandsaw. Another potential remover of digits and various parts. It's a dangerous business as a hobby, but I think now people realize that things can fly off lathes, and it's an expensive business, replacing teeth, noses and eyes. So I think the safety aspects of wood turning are getting through to people. But initially, you know, what you did, you just squinted to keep the shavings out of your eyes. And I think that's been a lesson that I'm still learning, that it can happen. Even accidents can happen to the most experienced. Well, I've given them all away. In fact, it got to the stage where when one of the family saw me coming with a bowl, they ran away. And the biggest compliment I've ever had was I showed somebody a bowl one day and they said, "Oh, is that a Derek Kerwood bowl?" I really was thrilled. Because Derek there was a shop at Chartwell Square called Fire and Form where he sold his bowls, and oh, it was magic in there. And I think we all go through that, bowls, more bowls, and because you can never get the perfect bowl. When I used to teach in the early days of the classes, I would get a new student to turn a wee bowl and then take it to the bandsaw and saw it right up through the middle, to their absolute horror, to show them the profile. Now that was suggested in one of the wood turning books. So when and you had to do it with your very best bowl, cut it through the middle with the bandsaw, teaching proportions. And I think that was the thrill of you never get the perfect bowl. And it's all about proportions. The most wonderful talk we ever had was by John Marshall at the club. John was an architect teacher at the Polytech, and he talked about the golden rectangle and the 1/3, 2/3 proportions. And that side of wood turning was fascinating, that certain things looked right and certain things did not look right, and the reasons for that. And it was all back to the golden rectangle, and John taught us that. It's an amazing experience. Most of us who were at that meeting never forgot that. At the stage I'm at, I've made enough bowls, and I tend to make things for small children or old people in rest homes. So here's an example using wet timber just wet logs, turning Christmas trees. So at Christmas, people paint these, decorate them. It's a sort of occupational therapy in rest homes. And of course, kids in school love these. And when they make little Christmas trees, they keep them. And that's the staggering thing. They've got trees that they made, you know, when they were in primary school. So that's rather nice, I think. Mushrooms are another thing. I mean, you know, you can make endless mushrooms of green wood. They're quick to turn. Let them dry, and sometimes they split. But good to paint, make a little present for people. And the other important part of wood turning is this drawer. I'll just open it for you. This is a drawer of all the stuff you've made to remind you what you made. If somebody says, "Oh, I want a kiwi egg," I've got the measurements of a kiwi egg. And there's all sorts of stuff in here. Walking sticks. As an old shepherd, I have made a lot of walking sticks in my day. This is the other thing. When you come from the Scottish borders and you're a shepherd, the first thing you've got to make is your walking stick. And you use a ram's horn. There, or you can make them with wood. There's a tremendous competition. There's the Border Shepherd Stick Dressing Association. And you learn this as a boy. When you start working, you learn how to make sticks. There's all sorts of rubbish in there, balls, and there was a run once of milk cans for toothpicks, and we all made those. And I think what happens is you can't keep anything to yourself. If you make something, you'll have somebody else copying it and making a better job. That frustrated me at the club. There was Barbara Sinnell. I taught her how to make Christmas trees, you know, quick. And she became an expert. I was quite embarrassed. You know, she was far better than the tutor. So there we are. I've no idea what that is, but you need a drawer of things to remember. That looks a highly sophisticated bit of equipment for something. So there we go. I tell you, it's an absolute treasure. This is that swamp Mairie from Mike Gifford, which is 3,000 years old. He had it carbon dated at Forest Research. If you see the rings on there, how much has it grown in a year? It's gone from there to there in a year.
And it's 3,000 years old.
An annual ring, and the tree was 2 foot, 2.5 feet wide. So that would be long before the Taupo eruption. And it's incredible, isn't it? You can see it's almost as if it must have got soaked with water. Beautiful. So I've been making Christmas trees of that, and they come out almost black. And it's a nice size for a Christmas tree. But it's so old that shavings don't come off, dust comes out of it. And that was harvested at at Horatu in the swamp there. What was happening in New Zealand then, probably one very large volcanic outburst. I've been using these ones that are hardened on the outside, and they've been very good. I use those just about all the time. Mm-hmm. So that would be the main tool. My friend made me this decorating tool. He was a Yorkshireman, so I don't like spending money. So that thing, believe it or not, works. It puts a beautiful knurling pattern on, so I don't need to buy $100 knurling tool. Eric's $5 job does well, so I had some fun with that initially. You collect wood, you know, little bits, and you never chuck anything away. And you know, you've got wood all over the place. And of course you need a whiteboard. Every workshop should have a whiteboard, just to say what you're thinking about. And I think the biggest pleasure I've had is when the grandchildren come, when they were little, just getting them in here. I have this table which a friend made. Now you can see by the amount of paint on there how the grandchildren have had fun. And we painted and we decorated, and I think that's the fun, to get the children working with their hands and their brains, and not just with their fingers pressing keys on a device. It's such a rewarding bit of equipment, and I mean, it's a very good bit of equipment to teach people the basics of wood turning, because you've got spindle turning, it's all there. And I think that's why there was so much satisfaction by getting the club members to make them. The proportions are important. The top shouldn't be any bigger than the bottom, but that's all you need. And I think it's a basic good exercise for teaching wood turning.